Does internet porn know you're cheating on it?
Oh, a guy yesterday came into my stream and he says, I want you to watch my video. And I said, okay, if you want me to watch your video, post it on Reddit and I will watch it if people upvote it. People did upvote it. Here's the video.
Hey everyone, welcome to my very first ever YouTube video. I'm wanting to give a perspective of how I see the current state of modern gaming as a casual gaming enthusiast. Just to introduce myself, I'm a married man with a full-time job, and I'm dedicated to a lot of various other commitments in my life. While gaming is definitely my favorite hobby, I don't always have the time to enjoy it. There are times when I'll go weeks without touching a game, and then there are stretches where I can squeeze in maybe a few hours every day. This is the reality for many of us, trying to balance work, life, and the hobby we love, gaming, as a regular...
I think that's one of the big issues that casual gamers have, is that a lot of times they can't play regularly every day, but a lot of games are built around like a daily reward structure. So like for a guy like this where, you know, like let's say Tuesdays he has to...
And that's the bad part about FOMO and stuff. They include those things in games, and it just pushes people away. They think it captures people, and it does some, and especially some whales, but for the average person, just all the stuff you miss based on battle passes, dailies, weeklies, etc. It's just... I kind of dropped all those games a while ago. Even though I have lots of time to play, it's still too much, even for me. And then you just want to stick to one game at most, even if you do settle down with one of them. And they tend to take up so much time, you don't even have time for any other game on the market, pretty much. Anything new, anything, you know, even small, like a few hours complete. Recent indie I played. It was one of the Survivor games. It wasn't Vampire Survivors, but after that, you just tend to drop everything. Can't do the live service anymore. The last one I did was First Descendant, and it has its fans. Pretty good. I don't think I'm touching them anymore. That was way too much, and that one's way more casual friendly than other games have been.
Take his kids somewhere or whatever, so he has like just way less time. Like now he's basically systematically getting farther behind every single week because of the way that the daily rewards for the game are. It's called having a life. Well, what I'm saying is that, like, so the way that the rewards in certain games are structured is that they're structured in a way to like front load the reward for logging on every day, right? There's like login rewards, you know, a daily like...
And then once you form the habit, he's correct. Once you form the habit, though, after that, that's when you get to the grind. Because the rewards, how they start off, are usually really good, and it's worth it. And then you get to the real meat of the grind. It's not good. You just keep doing it, because at that point, you're so invested into it already.
Little battle pass bar that you fill up, something like that. And like, oh,
that's
your
how they
first
hook you.
mission of the day gets you 400% experience, something like this, right? And so I think for a lot of guys like this, they get put in this position and they're kind of stuck, right? Yeah, just don't play that shit. Exactly.
Yeah, just don't even start. I knew it was a bad idea, but I played the First Descendant anyways. Big, huge fan of Warframe and loved it. It has its problems, but the same type of game. Just no more. No more.
Well, it's more that not only are
the closest I'll be playing is, you know, games that have that sort of structure, but you can kind of drop and come back. Two great examples are Helldivers 2, which is in a much better spot now, and Deep Rock Galactic. I know that one's been out a long time, but I recently just got into it this year. Both really great games that you just drop in a moment and come back anytime. There's no pressure to play at any one specific time.
Structured for people with no life. They're structured for people that have a consistent schedule, because the games are designed around playing them regularly, but life isn't designed around playing video games regularly. So you have these massive problems.
Yep.
I think he brings up a good point.
Not one of those hardcore streamers or YouTubers who can dedicate countless hours year-round to gaming.
Yeah.
But I do enjoy watching other content creators who live and breathe this stuff.
I'm glued to a chair.
That's not quite my reality though, and I know I'm not alone in this. So in this video, I want to represent the casual gamers out there, people like me who balance a love for gaming with everything else going on in their lives. I hope to give a balanced view on controversial perspectives, and also hope I could shed some light on what I think are very important topics that can impact the future of gaming. Alright, first things first, and this is the breaking point that finally pushed me to make this video.
Yeah.
I want to dive into the current state of AAA gaming.
You were the chosen one.
Quick Google search, you'll find
Oh, Jesus. That was perfect.
are defined as high-budget, high-profile titles, typically produced and distributed by major, well-known pub.
And they do literally hate you. They've come out and said it multiple times. That's not an exaggeration. The AAA companies, a lot of the developers now have come out and said they hate gamers.
Publishers.
That's what makes it so funny. So true.
But
I feel like it's kind of like this weird, like, bell curve now that I feel, where it's like, so this is like the quality, and this is the studio, where it's like indie, this is like indie, like super indie, this is like indie, this
indie.
is A, double A, there's a lot of A's here. But like, I unironically think that the quality for games is like this. Am I crazy? It's almost like these like
Perfect bell
mid-level
curve. Yep,
studios,
that's
I feel
actually
like
pretty
are able
true.
to produce a better game at a much higher ratio.
AA games, nothing
Yeah,
beats
it's like a
them.
standard
who grew
deviation,
up
exactly.
playing some truly incredible games from
For the
these
most
big
part.
developers.
There's
AAA used to
still
mean
lots of bad
something
ones,
more. It
obviously.
stood for trust,
Used to mean
originality,
something.
and
True.
most importantly, innovation. I think back to 2007 when I went on a Christmas holiday with my family in South
Halo?
Africa. I very
Halo
quickly
3?
discovered Assassin's Creed
Ooh,
and
okay.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare at a local games shop. I was completely hooked. It probably wasn't the best for me as I was 9 years old at the time, but
There you
I
go.
fell in love with these games.
Mhm.
While most kids will want to spend their summer vacation outside having fun, all I wanted to do was stay inside and play these amazing titles
Yeah, I
on my
can
dad's
relate.
MacBook, which he had installed Windows on just so I could play. Those games weren't just entertainment, they were groundbreaking. From that point on, I had complete trust in AAA developers and publishers, and rightfully so. I'd even
Well,
look
it's
for
also that like you need to have that trust because those were the most expensive games. See, like they kind of standardized everything by the time that like PS2 and especially by PS3, by the time that came out, pretty much all games were the same price. But back in the day, like N64 era and like Super Nintendo era, there was a massive like gradation of like what games cost. Like some games would be $20, other games would be like $70. So these AAA games were really expensive back then, and I think that's kind of how it was built up with this expectation. And even now, I think that's true. Like Helldivers 2 came out, it was $40, and if you want to buy the new Assassin's Creed,
Yep, and it was so good that people bought the deluxe edition, a lot of them. And once you added that on, it was a full-priced game. But people were happy to support them, because the game was great, at least at launch, and now it is again, but let's not get into that. And people will support a good product, live service or not. They'll pay the extra money.
it's like 70 or 80 or 90 if you want to play it like 3 days early.
the Ubisoft, Activision, Sega, Blizzard, or EA logos on game covers or in magazines, knowing that they are a sign of quality.
Yeah.
Those logos were like a seal of approval, a way to gauge whether I was making a good decision when getting hyped for or even picking a game.
Well, that was the thing. Like, I mean, I was this way with Blizzard. Like, I had no interest in Overwatch. Like, Overwatch wasn't a kind of game I played. I was a WoW player. Like, the only FPS I had played before then was Modern Warfare 2, I guess Gears, it's technically third-person FPS, and Halo. And then I played PUBG after that. Like, what the fuck would I care about Overwatch for? But because it was made by Blizzard, I was like, oh, I bet this is going to be really good because Blizzard's really good. And that's the way it used to be. Same with Bungie is the same way. I like anybody who played the old games, like we already know this is the Bungie logo. Bungie used to be massive. It was huge.
Remember that feeling of seeing
That was
those
back
logos
when
above
Blizzard was
the
actually
game?
good too. And even EA. Not in sports games, but those games used to be so good that I would play them with buddies. I would even buy the occasional one. Like, that's how good the sports games used to be. That it got someone like me playing the sports. And not that I don't play them in real life, but it's not my thing. I'm not super into it, so yeah. There's a time that EA used to be good. That's crazy.
Especially when it was blue.
That rush of excitement, knowing you were
Yeah.
about to dive into one of the best gaming experiences of your life.
I felt that way. The last time I really felt that way was with Elden Ring. With Black Myth Wukong, like it was like such a wild card, right? You know, Chinese developer, pretty much unproven record with AAA games.
Yeah, everyone
What are
thought
you
it was
really
gonna bomb.
expecting to get out of this? But with Elden Ring, like bro, I sat down and I knew today was the day. You know? It was great.
But unfortunately, over the years, something has been happening, and it didn't happen overnight. It's been a slow, gradual change, like watching someone age or noticing yourself slowly gaining weight. It's happening
Ooh.
right in front of us, but we don't fully grasp how much things have changed until one day we look in the mirror, or even at an old photo, and the difference is startling. Over the years, the trust,
Man.
originality, and innovation that once defined AAA companies has been slowly fading.
I think one of the really big weaknesses of games now is that games are produced with such a big budget that they need to appeal to a broad enough target audience, a target audience that at least...
And there's too many links in the chain. Too much management. Things can't get done. Simplest little chain. You have to go through a manager who has to go through a manager who has to go through QA who has to go through another manager just to report back to okay one simple change.
Through simulation and through like a projection, like a financial projections that they can make their money back on.
That's why the
So,
bell
like,
curve.
logically, if you can make
Such a big thing that Asmon Gold was mentioning, because it definitely is a bell curve. Because you don't really have to deal with that. AA companies are just big enough for that not to be an issue. And
100% of your money back, you would want to
still
invest the
you
most
get that
amount of money possible.
big, huge jump in
And if
quality
wanna
that you don't
invest the
get from
most amount of
indies.
money possible, you want to make the most money.
You get the
have
best
to
of both
appeal to the most
worlds.
people. So what happens is that games become more and more complex, because one thing that I can really notice with old games is that many old games play like Space Marine 2, where it has a pretty narrow breadth of content. It's not like you can go and do everything. There isn't some big open world. There's a lobby and you can do that thing and that's it. And I think that Monster Hunter is kind of the same way in a different fashion. But I feel like most games are trying to become like your everything game. And they're doing that, I think, because they can't justify the budget that they're investing into this game unless the target audience can be projected to be everyone. So if you look back and you go back and play a lot of these old games, like I did this with Dragon's Dogma 1, the game really isn't that complex. There's not a lot to it, but what there is good.
Logos from developers I
And
used to
Monster Hunter
admire.
hits that perfect balance between online co-op and wanting to get online with your friends every day. We're starting to see a shift more into that type of game with all these hub-based multiplayer games that are starting to come out and getting way more popular.
With skepticism, even a strong urge to avoid their games. What I find surprising is how patient and forgiving gamers have been towards AAA companies for so long. A great example of this has been the Battlefield franchise, particularly with the launch of Battlefield 5 in November 2018. This is the first game in the franchise that was surrounded by quite a bit of controversy and received a lot of mixed and negative
Oh, yeah.
Well, just like this trailer must have been a banger back then. Yeah, for sure.
directions, despite being part of a well-loved, long-standing series of games.
Never played the game, but I
Although
remember
am really
this.
talking about the Battlefield IP here, you'll probably notice similar patterns with other major AAA companies and their once revered
Halo.
franchises. Battlefield 5.
I mean, Diablo, like, I feel like Diablo has... I've been really surprised to see so few people excited about the expansion for Diablo. Like,
I don't know why he's surprised. He's covered lots. It's for, what does he call them? Gamer dads. It's a very casual game. No one really cares outside of it. He knows that. I don't know why this is surprise to
it
him.
almost feels like it's not coming out. Am I the only person that's noticed that?
They also didn't advertise it that well. No one cares. No one knows it's out.
Primarily due to
Except for those
perceived
casual
historical
dads.
inaccuracies. The inclusion of female soldiers in a World War II game.
And there's too many good
led
games lately.
emphasized the game
Not
as
worth it to
unrealistic,
go back right now.
debate over political correctness. DICE, the developer,
Should have been a
was
free
I think
update.
The problem is that you can't really have a
bonded by standing
like
firm.
you can't really have a historical game where it's like World War II and you have like women with like a claw hand beating up men fighting on the front lines. Anybody is going to watch that and they're going to think to themselves, the reason...
It's not just that. Look at this image. World War I. Guns. Cannons. So not only do you have a woman soldier overpowering all these men, but she's doing it with a melee weapon and one hand. There's so much wrong with this image.
Why this is happening is because
it's
of
so
political
absurd.
correctness. Every normal person knows that's not what's happening. They know that it's completely unrealistic and it's silly. And so when you look at what you're seeing here,
And it would be fine if it was in like a franchise that was much more fantasy or otherworldly or, you know, like alternate take on history, but that isn't the case. These tend to mimic like and be much more grounded in reality.
know that you're not going to get an authentic experience. Nobody asked for that. It's ridiculous. It's a game. It's fantasy. Well, if it was fantasy, then why are they making?
Yeah, always someone that says
realistic, right? Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's fantasy. Well, then
it's
why
a
can't it
it's
just
a
be all
military
facts?
shooter.
Yeah, this is fiction. Also, like, this is it, and I that's actually what am I even saying that for? It's not fiction. Like, they're making this and they're basing this off of like something that happened in the
Exactly.
past. Like, it's based off World War II. And
Just like I
also,
was saying.
it's just such an obvious
World War II is fake. Someone said that.
It's
Okay, so this
obvious,
is
just
based
like-
on World War II, not World War One. I thought it was the World War One.
Okay, yeah, we're gonna put a woman.
It's been a long time since this came out.
Anytime I see something like
Yeah,
this,
but
I'm
yeah,
like,
everyone's
okay,
saying
so
World
the
War II
game-
is fake.
because to these people, it matters more that the game represents some sort of ideology rather than the game is actually good or has any sort of like real gameplay. At a very, very face level, these people are more concerned with the aesthetics of the game and making this game look like it conforms to modern standards than making this game faithful to what it's trying to represent. It's a priority list. Yeah, exactly. It's immersion breaking. It is. It's massively immersion breaking.
On their creative choices, which only escalated the controversy. Further fueling the fire, a DICE executive famously responded to criticism with, "If you don't like it, don't buy it."
Oh.
Does this remind you of anything?
I think that might have been one of the first games to do that. I don't remember any other game before that where the devs came out and it was this whole hate campaign, like in terms of video games. I can't remember if Ghostbusters 2016 was before or after this, but that would have been the first for big set off for movies. But for games, this was definitely the first that did it, where they were just so
This alone
brazen.
caused a portion of the fan base to not buy into Battlefield 5,
Yeah, people listen. That's bad.
including myself.
Yep.
The game's
Yeah.
marketing was seen as completely unfocused. The reveal trailer, with its chaotic and almost cartoonish tone, confused fans about whether this game was a serious, historically themed World War II shooter. This lack of clear direction left many of us unsure of what to expect from Battlefield 5. Upon release, Battlefield 5 felt incomplete, missing key features such as the promised Firestorm Battle Royale mode and Tides of War live service content, which
Well,
were
that's
delayed.
the big problem. They didn't have a battle royale. Is like this came out, like he said, 2018. In 2018, everything was about battle royales. They should have released with a BR mode.
There's still some games coming out that are battle royales and have that mode. It's still kind of being pushed, nowhere near as much anymore, but I'll be right back. 1 second.
Like, this is, again, it's a studio that, oh, it did? Did it have it on release? They patched it later on? Yeah, see that?
Other
Much
promised
later, yeah.
features like the combined arms co-op mode were also absent at launch, making the game feel quite bare bones compared
That's
to previous entries like Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 4. When we finally got these features, they were apparently not worth the wait. Now this is what it is. And we've seen many glorious redemption stories from poor launches over the years. So I'll give it to DICE that Battlefield 5 is a decent enough game to play now.
Yeah, I've heard that this game has been improved, but the thing is that if people make up their mind that the game is bad, most people are not going to want to admit that they were wrong and come back and play the game afterwards. And I think that's what happens the most, is that, like, as soon as the game comes out and people get a bad impression of it, then the game is permanently bad. I think that there's a lot of examples.
Especially among those casual dads, like I mentioned with Diablo 4. They don't know enough in general. They're not deep into like YouTube and checking reviews constantly for every single purchase, and you know, they just buy what looks good.
Really, you could use No Man's Sky. Think about how long it took them to rebuild that reputation. Cyberpunk 2077. And then also...
yeah, Cyberpunk. Lots of people still won't play it, and that game completely 180'd. I love the original story and what they were doing, but there was so many things wrong with the game. And now with, what is it called, Phantom Liberty? It's exactly how the game should have been outlawed, minus a couple things that they still haven't added, but it's also like a modder's playground, so... think of it as like a cyberpunk style Skyrim, but the base game is actually much better than Skyrim, obviously.
Wow. Like, for example, I think that Blizzard fixed a lot of the problems that alienated players in terms of like gearing and like systems, but a lot of people don't come back to the game because they had a bad experience with it and they just don't really feel like playing anymore. So I think that there's a lot of cases, like Lords of the Fallen is the same way. Apparently they made a bunch of changes to the game, and as far as I know, nobody even came back to try it out. So
yeah, I forgot they were doing that.
If you come out with a game and then the release of the game is like very, very bad, it's very hard to get a second first impression from players.
Upon launch, it disappointed.
Plus, there's way too many Souls-like games. I know there's people who love them. Asmongold is a huge fan of that type of gameplay, but in terms of the single-player games, like on the multiplayer side, you have battle royales like we were talking about, and now it's extraction shooters. And single-player games, it's been like this for quite a few years, and it's still going strong. The push for like Dark Souls-esque type games. There's constant ones being pushed out, so you have to get it right at launch. You have to do good right at the start.
Quite a lot of us. In summary,
need that to stand out.
Battlefield 5's launch was plagued by
too many good games out there for people to waste their time.
Features and technical problems, leading to a mixed reception and pretty disappointing sales.
Yep.
Now, this can happen.
surprise.
It can happen to any game, and there are some awesome redemption stories, like I said before. But there's not supposed to be a pattern. This is not supposed to happen to every single game on what was once a beloved IP from a company that is known for making incredible games in the past. If you're going downhill, if you are on track to death, survival instinct is supposed to kick in and you're supposed to turn around and go the other way.
You're supposed to.
Now, in line with what I've been talking about with Battlefield, I want you to think back and see if you can spot any of these trends with other IPs from AAA developers over the years.
I think it happens all the time. Happens constantly. And what ends up happening is that these games, they try to appeal to a broader and broader audience, and eventually they water down the experience of the game to where it appeals to nobody, including the original audience. I think this happens with a lot of games, is that they try to like standardize it and make it like completely appealing to everyone. Like WoW is the best example of this, right? Anthem, I don't know, I didn't play Anthem, but like Assassin's Creed in a nutshell.
Ugh, Anthem, what a mess. Everyone brings it up, rightfully so. The core gameplay was absolutely amazing, and there's so much they could have done with it. And once you got to the very late game, the gearing was actually pretty good. But everything before that and the story, different like types of mission, all of it was terrible, except the core gameplay. It was so amazing that if they actually redid the game like they were gonna, like they were planning to do like an Anthem 2.0, almost like No Man's Sky or Final Fantasy 14. That's a better example. I think it would have done great, because the core bones, there's still nothing like it. And I still get the urge once in a while to go back and play, but then I just think, yeah, okay, the actual like core type gameplay is good, but everything surrounding it is so awful. And it's hard to go back. Even just to play for 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, and I think also the other
huge missed
issue is that a lot
opportunity.
of people grade the quality of a game based off of how long they spend playing the game, which I think is a really bad metric. I think that you should grade the quality of a game based off of the time that you spend playing.
There's no game on the market like it either. Nothing comes close. No one's tried to do anything like Anthem before, around the time, or after. So it's still completely unique, and I think that's why it sticks in my mind. But yeah, gameplay, great. Everything else, complete garbage.
Playing the game, and if you enjoyed that time or not. Because there's a lot of games that I've put 15 hours into that I would recommend more than a game that I'd put 50 hours into.
Anthem by the one and only BioWare.
One more orange?
The studio once celebrated for the very
More piece?
successful Mass Effect and Dragon Age franchises.
Oh
Anthem
yeah, they're coming out with a
launched
new one of those.
with very confusing marketing, a lack of in-game content, and pretty terrible technical issues that quickly drove players away. If I remember correctly, players didn't
Where'd he
even come
go?
to it because of how bad the gameplay looked compared to the
Yeah.
launch trailer or the gameplay trailer. Mass Effect Andromeda is another prime example of this. Plagued by terrible animations, off-putting character design, and a lackluster
And Andromeda, this was the one that BioWare worked on just before Anthem. Some of the core systems were okay and were still good, but it was pretty much, combat was amazing, everything else was shit. The good thing is, it was offline, there was lots of mods to fix things. Unfortunately, not the story, obviously. It did have a slightly better fate. I don't think we can ever expect the next Mass Effect that they announced forever ago to actually do anything or go anywhere, especially if Dragon Age, what is it called, Veilguard, is any indication. No one works there that made these good games, like the ones before Andromeda. They're gone. But yeah, the combat in Anthem was basically an evolution of what we saw in Andromeda, and that core gameplay was really good, but when it's surrounded by everything else that is awful, it pushes people away.
storyline that severely damaged the franchise's reputation. Then there's Assassin's Creed Unity, which was infamous for its buggy and nearly unplayable launch. As for Halo, and I don't really want to dive deep into this.
And Unity was a perfect example of when Assassin's Creed was still good, and we were just talking about this, that the casuals won't come back to the game if it launches badly. And Unity was the first Assassin's Creed where it was just a disastrous launch, and they did actually fix it. If you go back and play it now, it is one of the better games in the series, which is really odd for me because it's not my type of setting or historical background. I'm not really into the French Revolution. It doesn't sound too appealing to me, but it was honestly pretty good. It was probably one of the last good ones that they put out. I think that was like a clear point in their history where you saw a turnaround It's an awful launch, but they still had talented people working there. They just pushed it out way too fast. Then after that, it's been horrible since Unity's launch, basically.
But it saddens me how 343 Industries have mishandled
Minus
series
Division 1 and 2. There's a lot of good things to like those games.
through ego, greed.
It has
and
its fans.
selflessness. For me, one of the sad ones.
I don't think it's any of those things, ego or greed, personally. I do think it's ego to an extent. That's not true. But I think it's they just don't know how to make a good game. They don't know how to appeal. Like, the fact that Halo Infinite didn't launch with an official Battle Royale mode is unforgivable. It is, in my opinion,
Blitzscreen.
completely unforgivable.
Forge.
BR
Much
is
more
one
important.
of the most popular modes
They didn't
of
come out either.
playing games nowadays. That should have been one of your top priorities. I'm sorry. I know that a lot of Halo fans are like, oh, we don't like Battle Royales. The proof is, look at the amount of people that are playing the games. Look at the popularity of these games. Battle Royale.
I think this is a bad take from him. Yes, they were popular at the time, but you don't need a game, as history has proven, just to shove in what the popular thing is. Halo should have done what Halo does best. I'm not the biggest Halo fan, but I know enough people who love it. And people love the single-player campaign. They love the co-op. They love the multiplayer. They love the Forge. All of it comes together. They love all that. Maybe you could have brought in like a handful of extra people with Battle Royale, but they should have pushed harder for more unique modes and actually getting the split screen and other things in the first place, or I guess at all, because split screen was canceled. But no, I completely disagree
are
here.
Huge, and you didn't even think to make one of these? It's insane. Think about that. It's crazy.
Yeah, and as you see, his community is kind of split on this, which is really weird for an Asmongold video. Usually they just echo what he says a lot of the time, but half of them seem to be like, yeah, that makes sense, and the other half are like, no, battle royales are trash.
It doesn't, like, I hate BR. I don't like BR. I don't care if you like BR or not. The truth is that it's an extremely popular fucking game mode, especially when Halo Infinite came out, and it should have released with one of them, and it would have kept more people talking and playing the game.
You know what else is extremely popular? That people brush off as niche, but it's not. BR. BR sounds like BR. And Asmongold is one of those people that brush it off. But almost 30 million sales, and that number is going to grow as the 3S is released. You can love or hate meta, but they've really grown the VR market, and it's thriving more than ever, and it's more affordable than ever, so they're not hurting for players. It doesn't matter what type of games you're looking for either. They have big budget games, small budget games. It's not like it used to be. And no, Half-Life Alyx isn't the only game on there anymore. People like to meme on it and say that's the only game for VR. No, if you hear someone say that, they know nothing about VR. They're not in the space. It's truly an amazing, cheap, but also great platform to get into now. It's not like it was even like 3 to 5 years ago. It's huge. Like the Quest 2, as much as we all hate Facebook and Meta, it completely changed VR. It got a ton of people in, and there's so many good games coming out right now for it. The biggest ones being the Batman game. Not made by Rocksteady, thankfully, because all those people left, but it's made by a dedicated VR team, and they're just, if you've seen the trailers or the interviews, any type of promotion for it, any type of reactions for people who actually played it. I think it was at Tokyo Game Show or one of the Gamescom. It's a classic Batman Arkham game in VR, and it's the length of Batman Arkham Asylum, and it's structured the same way. You have like that main hub that breaches into other areas, and you need it's a Metroidvania, so you need your upgrades and to get into other areas, and it's exactly like Arkham Asylum from everything I've read. Oh, that game's going to be huge for VR. Whether you like VR or not, you can't deny that the market is huge, and it's even bigger than Xbox. I know Xbox has fallen off a lot, but it's the third biggest now. Because you have Sony at the top. I say Sony at the top. No, I think Switch is at the top. Even if you combined the sales of PS4 and PS5, it's pretty close because they're both over, I think, 100 million or around there. And then in third place would be Meta, the MetaQuest headsets. And then you have Xbox finally in fourth place. For at least consoles. PC is completely different, but VR is killing it. I know, kind of a tangent there, but you'll notice if I watch more Asmongold videos, he'll eventually talk about VR.
Like, all you have to do is look at...
And he's completely out of touch on that subject, like a lot of people are.
When they released Warzone. Warzone spiked the player base of Modern Warfare by like 1,000x. Like, the amount of people playing it, talking about it, it completely blew caught up. Like Warzone, in my opinion, Warzone, like, revitalized the entire COD franchise. They should have done this with Halo. And it is unforgivable that they didn't with Halo Infinite. I know that there's a lot of purists out there and people that don't like BRs, but it is undeniable that there are a lot of people that do, and it was stupid not to release the game without one.
Debatable, but agreed that there was a lot of people that loved him.
76, which released in a very broken and unfinished state, was missing NPCs, had constant bugs, and very poor performance. It left us fans quite frustrated with how Bethesda handled such a beloved series. Even after AAA companies have tarnished the reputation
What a
of
trash
so many
fire.
once beloved IPs, we as casual gamers still find ourselves getting hyped over their new announcements. Well, at least many of us did until recently.
Perhaps you should have let go also.
I vividly remember...
It's crazy how much money they put onto that. It really is. Wow. Concord? Yeah, I know. It's sad.
Oh, geez, look at that face.
Man.
Yeah.
watching the Battlefield 2042 trailer in 2021.
Bad part is, if any of you've seen the still from Dragon Age, Veilguard, the character creator, the one that looks like Quagmire, doesn't even compare. I can't wait for that game to come out.
I told my friend that this
Just because everyone can
this
rip
is
it to
where
shreds.
DICE and EA
It's
will
going to be
redeem
amazing.
themselves. They have to. Despite the numerous missteps and disappointments I
Entertaining
experienced
for all the wrong
between
reasons.
Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 2042, myself and a lot of gamers still maintained our patience and trust, believing that a AAA company, DICE, would finally deliver, that AAA companies could still be trusted. Unfortunately, the game...
I think that a lot of AAA companies can be trusted. I think that it's really just like a half dozen really bad ones that create this entire negative perception. Because when you really look at all of these studios together, you have like, I think you've got Larian that now I would say probably is a AAA studio, From Software. I think Nintendo, a lot of like mainline Nintendo titles are effectively AAA games, and those are really good. Like, let me think, Capcom, AAA studio, Rockstar, Hoyoverse, if you like gacha games, they are the best. CD Projekt Red, like, there are a lot of really good AAA game developers, but I feel like everybody focuses on, like, the Ubisoft, Blizzard, EA. I feel like those are probably the big three that are, like, the ones that a lot of people complain about. There are good AAA games that come out. It's just that when there's a bad one, I think there's a lot more focus on it because of how heavy the marketing for it is.
As the saying goes, the bigger you are, the harder you fall. It's a saying for a reason. Of course, these guys are going to crash bigger than anyone else.
I mean, for their big games, I feel like they almost always hit, but they also release a lot of like kind of secondary games that are, you know, usually not great.
Short. My friend and I ended up refunding Battlefield 2042 within just 10 minutes of playing it.
Wow.
I'm focusing on Battlefield
Minutes.
mainly because it has been my go-to franchise in the past. I loved it. I was an OG Battlefield 2 player.
Yeah.
I was unfortunately too young when Battlefield 1942 came out, but I thoroughly enjoyed the Battlefield 2 experience. Bad Company 1 and 2 were absolute gems, introducing the destruction mechanic that truly set Battlefield apart from other FPS games. I remember growing up in South Africa at Battlefield 3, which I played on 27 to 28 FPS. I think I clocked over 900 hours playing like that on my old PC. I love that game.
I mean,
so
to
much.
be fair, back then that was normal.
I'm sure many of you who are old enough can relate to this experience with other beloved franchises. Maybe you were a die-hard Halo fan, or you couldn't wait to see what Ubisoft would deliver after the experience of Assassin's Creed Black Flag, only to find disappointment year after year. The state of the majority...
I feel like that's the way I've felt with a lot of studios. And like now, I try not to get like really invested or like emotional about whether a game is going to be good or bad. I just try to hope that it's good, and if it's not good, I just move on, right? I play something else. And also, like, I feel like there's so many games that are always being released that there's no reason to tie yourself down to like one individual game franchise and like invest everything into doing that unless you really want to do that. Because that's what I did with WoW, and it was a pretty unhealthy relationship.
He also missed so many great games. He's so out of touch with that whole generation of games that he missed. Which is why when he talks about certain things, he's way off base, especially from the generation of when he was playing WoW games. Like, there were so many people who got sunk into WoW. I got into it, but I was still playing other stuff, thankfully. There was a lot of great stuff coming out around that time.
I think that there's some people, like I
From
see
classic all the way
still kind of in that cycle.
past,
and it's true with like
what,
WoW, like
Lich
League,
King,
I think there's a few other
Cataclysm.
ones like that too.
of
That's how
AAA
fandom
gaming
works,
is
though.
devastating.
Yeah, but
There are
there's a
only a few
spectrum for it.
exceptions, companies that seem to still have their fans' best interests at heart. Even among these, cracks and doubts remain. Rockstar Games and From Software are notable exceptions, but today I want to focus on what I grew up defending, admiring, and loving. Ubisoft. I used to brag to my friends about how much I loved Ubisoft and their games, urging them to join me in this passion. But now I find myself checking the news and stock prices to see if they finally pulled the plug on their live support. The second
Funny thing about that is that there's actually a post here. Let me see if I can find it. I saw this today. Ubisoft is, quote, reviewing all of its strategic options for its future.
Well, they kind of have to. Is it like a 94% drop in stock? 85%? It's somewhere between 85 and 90.
That sounds really good.
Insane.
Reviewing its strategic options for the future. Uh-oh.
to this place where I want to see Ubisoft crumble and go bankrupt. They've made me feel stupid.
It's entertaining.
Treating casual gamers like we're not in the know somehow, or we live under a rock. Usually someone like
They deserve it.
You know what? I think he's right about that. That's really true. Like, they treat casual gamers as if they're stupid. Like, they release something, all the hardcore gamers fucking hate it, and they're like, that's okay, we've got a bunch of morons that are these dumb dads that are gonna buy the game, and we're gonna be fine, guys, don't worry. It's nuts. Whatever you think about it, they don't respect their time? Yes.
Just a casual gamer doesn't pick up on the behind-the-scenes politics of game companies. I'm just living my life, playing whatever games I think look cool and enjoyable, but locking me out of gaming content at launch with superficial pricing.
I do think this is so true. I absolutely think this does turn off casual players, because like a lot of casual gamers, you've got to.
And this is American prices. For anyone else in the world, I can't remember if the pound is more or less now than the American dollar, but they've been below and they've been above, but they've always been charged more. It's the same in Canada. We've had much more lower periods than the American dollar, but we have had our periods where we went above, and for a long time there was like a good generation of games where we were above, but we still got charged out the ass for everything, even though our dollar was stronger. Prices are ridiculous for games. Yes, they're one of the cheapest forms of entertainment, like in terms of dollar per hour in a lot of ways, but you got to ask yourself, how how valuable and how much fun you're having in each of those hours, if it's actually worth it. Especially with Ubisoft games, a lot of it is just filler. It's not fun. So, okay, you get 100 to 200 hours worth of gameplay, but 10 hours of that is enjoyable?
Think about this,
No.
let's use a little bit of logic, right? If you're a casual gamer and you're a gamer dad, the odds are if you've got kids and a wife, like, you're budgeting money, right? I mean, like, money is a factor for you. So you're thinking about money and you see this is $109 for some bullshit, and that's going to immediately not appeal to you. Just on a base level. And it's not like this isn't some kind of like...
And even if you don't have other priorities, get a better game. You could spend your time better. Even people who have the extra money, that money adds up. Put it into savings. Put it into investments. Do something with it. Just, it's not worth it, no matter if you have the money or not. You'd be surprised how over time this money would add up. Even with current interest rates, there's still lots of investments. There's so many uses for this money, no matter how much or how little you make, that it's not worth it for anybody, even the casual dads.
Super hardcore gamer take. You pull up this screen and it's like $129. What the fuck? And you won't have that much time to justify the price.
If I remember correctly, that was like 175 Canadian. 30, 60. I think it was over 175 with tax. So, no.
Exactly.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Throwing innovation out the window, flooding your YouTube promotional videos with obvious bot comments and likes.
If you look at, every single positive comment, they are within 4.9 to 5.1 thousand likes.
I remember this. This was hilarious.
One of them is being made by an individual with a first name, last name, number combination.
This has been the final straw for me. It's disheartening to watch a company that once felt like a beacon.
I don't know for a fact that was Ubisoft. And I find
it was on their channel promoting their stuff.
However,
come on.
Coincidence and personal interest.
Even if it's the PR ad agencies revolving around Ubisoft and not the the main company itself, it's still a part of the Ubisoft machine. Definitely them.
They usually converge.
Come on.
Not a coincidence. But I would never say they did it. There's not enough evidence for that.
Oh, there is.
And passion
come on.
Turn into what seems like a cash.
Bots are expensive. No one's wasting resources on that unless there's a purpose behind it. Come on.
Grab machine. Remember when Ubisoft used to take risks?
There was way too many.
Worlds filled with depth and rich storytelling. Games like Prince of Persia and Splinter Cell felt innovative.
Yeah.
And they challenged the norms of gaming. Now it feels like they're just recycling formulas, relying on the same IPs or brands year after year.
That's one of the things that really kind of burns me out of some types of games, is that they have the same formula. Like, it's one of the reasons why I didn't really stick around and play Zenless Zone Zero, is that I had already played the gacha game formula a lot with Honkai Star Rail and then with Wuthering Waves. So whenever I saw Zenless Zone Zero basically have the same formula, I'm like, okay, well, I know what I have to do. I know what I can, what I can and can't do. Like, it's just, I feel the same way about WoW. Like, I know what the formula for WoW seasons are. And it's like, I think the difference is that I wish there were more games that allowed you to play at your own pace, because I think this is a big issue, and I think this is also a big problem with casual players too, is that casual players, they think that these games think that they're helping by giving casual players these daily and weekly rewards if they don't have time to play.
No, it pushes them out, like I said at the start of the video.
All it does is create another chore in their life that, by the nature of them being casual players, generally does not prioritize gaming. So.
And it would benefit everybody if all these places would just do permanent battle passes. Maybe you can have an incentive, like you earn more XP while the season for it is going on, or however you want to structure it, but there's very few games that do permanent battle passes, and that's one of the only great things to come out of the last Halo game, was that they had the permanent battle passes, and of course Helldivers too. You can drop it. You can come back later, assuming that you bought the pass, you got halfway through it. It's not wasted money. I mean, it's digital goods, kind of all wasted money, but you just pick up wherever you left off and finish it, even if it's from years ago. And it's absolutely the way that these things need to be, because it's also an extra microtransaction that they could get from people, and it's more progression. So you can have people who have been gone for years or just bought the game, and then they come out and they have so much to grind, even beyond the normal stuff, because they could just come back and do all the battle passes or just the ones they want. And battle pass is cheaper than other microtransactions these days. When you work it out, I don't see why more companies don't do it. The FOMO just...
So what ends up happening is that
it drives more people away than it brings in.
Trying to, like log on every day, they burn themselves out. And I think that games that allow you to just kind of play at your own pace, like Elden Ring or Black Myth Wukong or Core Keeper or something like that, without having a bunch of like reward structures and things like that, I think those games are actually better for casual players than the games that have these artificial catch-up mechanisms. Because what I think FOMO does, and I've said this many times, FOMO acts as a barrier. FOMO keeps people in the game, but it also keeps people out of the game. Because I don't want to...
And let's say I changed my mind and went back to Last Ascendant. I feel I've already missed too much. Let's say I do want to play it and I get back to it. I'm not going to, but if I did, in the month that I've been gone, maybe more, I've already missed too much. It feels like a waste. I missed this thing, I missed this event, I missed earning this as a reward. I wasn't there when the community was figuring out a certain boss that just released.
I want to go in and play a game like this.
Drives me away from it even more in games like it.
I would love to go play Destiny 2, but because of the game being out for so long and it seemingly is so complex, I'm not going to play that game until they bring out Destiny 3. And there's a lot of games like that. And so I think that really, like, if you look at it from a casual player's perspective, and this is a problem that a lot of fan bases have, is that fan bases take for granted a lot of things that are knowledge that they've earned by playing the game a lot. But the truth is that, like, most people like me, for example, like playing Final Fantasy 14 is the best example of this. How many of you guys, the hardest thing I ever did in Final Fantasy 14 was buy the game? That to me was harder than any boss. Like Alexander Savage, min item, min item level, like no echo or whatever the fuck.
For me, it's the sub.
Compared to being
subs are dead.
It was awful.
No interest in playing it if I have to pay $15 a month.
So like, that's really what I think holds a lot of players back. And I think that giving people the
that's definitely another barrier.
Pace is really important, because like what he said, some days you're not going to have any time. Some days you have 3 hours.
And not only the sub, but for FF, new or old player, chances are you're going to have to catch up at some point or do a huge chunk of content. And you have to buy the game. You have to buy the latest expansion. Luckily, all the other expansions come with it, unlike Destiny, where you'd have to buy everything. But you also have the sub fee. Okay, and then on top of all that stuff, what else do you have to do? Oh, that's right. A lot of the cosmetics, event stuff, probably missed out on. And on top of that, you have a microtransaction store. You literally have every form of nickel and diming in FF14. That's what keeps me away personally. And I was there for FF14 1.0. I was one of the few people. I thought some of the concepts were good, but I mostly stuck around just to chat with friends and people I met. And I was pretty much there until just before the first expansion came out. Too much to catch up on at this point, too much to go through. It's just, there's too many barriers to get back into the game. Not interested at all at this point.
So whenever you have like such a big discrepancy there, on the days that he has
So
no
many
time,
barriers
he's
for
not able to
FF14.
log in and get the rewards. On the days that he has a lot of time, he feels like the first 10
The only
minutes
thing FF14 is missing is a battle pass. I don't know if they've implemented one ever or if they plan to, but once they do that, okay, then they've done every type of monetization.
are great, and then the rest of the time is kind of wasted because the game is balanced around that. It's just so many, like, I just wish games would get out of this, like, Skinner box, like, you know, continuous, like, you have to log on every day thing. It's very exhausting.
Try to squeeze more and more money out of their fans. And it's not just the content that's lacking, it's the connection. I remember the excitement of discovering new worlds and characters that felt alive and engaging. But now it seems like the focus is solely on monetization strategies. Season passes, microtransactions, and limited time events that prioritize profit over player experience.
Well, this is a big issue too. Like, absolutely. And also the big problem is that when you have a game that has microtransactions in it, they fundamentally change the DNA of the game. Because at the point where you have reward structures,
create a problem and sell people the solution.
Microtransactions that are designed to
They're incentivized to do that.
or multiply those reward structures. What ends up happening is that the game is now based around you spending that money. And that's the way it is with a lot.
AC Odyssey is the perfect example of this. Single player game. They put in the XP boost. But the XP was so skewed in that game that even with the XP boost bought, and no, I never bought it. There are other ways around it, but even with a significant increase to your XP far beyond what the bought one gave, you were still looking at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to cap out everything. It was ridiculous. I'll tell you right now, I put the XP at 500 times the normal value. After 200 hours, I still had stuff to cap in that game. The initial levels went fast, but everything after that, unlocking it all, and the amount of sheer content in that game, that was... I don't know why I sunk so many hours into that. Once in a while, I just like a checklist game. And that was kind of my perfect checklist, kind of zoning out type game for a long time. And man, that game was insane, even with crazy amounts of extra XP. Like, I can't imagine playing it with even the paid booster, let alone no XP booster in the first place. It was so over-designed to get you to pay.
A lot of games.
Crazy.
Like, imagine how much more fun gacha games would be if you had $100 to spend every single day. Like, just theoretically. And it was just credited onto your account.
Or if you could earn that much per day,
right?
that'd be good.
You'd be able to, like, actually do progress and, like, you know, like, actually play the game out. But it's not designed...
Shout out to Helldivers 2 for actually including premium currency you can earn. Very rare.
Is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. Grand Blue Fantasy Relink functions in a lot of ways like a gacha game, except for you can just progress on your own and do everything by yourself, and there's no money involved. And you can see the difference there. And I want to say that a lot of these games, they're bad because of the monetization. The monetization makes them bad.
Yeah.
Of gaming has been overshadowed by this.
People are like, you can ignore it. You don't have to do this. Well, that's true, but you're still part of the system. They still got their hooks into you. You're still fighting against the current, so to speak, because you're incentivized to buy the solution to a problem they've created in the first place. And even if you don't ever fall for it or buy anything, you're still there as fodder for the whales.
Endless push for profit. Now,
it's like they're not going to add in the really cool armor sets and video in the game if they can put it in the store. Because now
that too.
The store armor sets, they want them to be more
the earnable, as much as people were praising it, the earnable armor sets in Diablo 4 were complete garbage. people were praising them, but once they saw that what was actually in the store, yeah, complete 180 on most people's perspective. The store armor was absolutely crazy well done, and the in-game stuff you could earn was so generic and so boring.
Exciting and more interesting because that's how you make more money.
Yep.
It's like just basic logic. Do people want to buy something that looks cool, or do they want to buy something
Not
that
everyone
looks like
operates on
everything
logic, though,
else?
sadly.
For profit. Now, I know this is being said all over YouTube. I've come across videos of this before, but I am coming to you as a casual gamer. A lot of us are only discovering this in the last few months. Some of us maybe the last few years. Some of us even today on this video.
And I think also this shift towards live service is also really demanding, and it's draining on casual players like him. Because like each live service game demands a certain amount of attention. And whenever you have to put that attention into the game, it can become very draining. Like, how many of you guys have played a live service game that's felt like a job?
Covering these things. The thing that I find
They all
crazy
eventually
is
do at
with
some point.
The grace that we show these companies, we still tend to trust their trailers and their adverts. You guys have promised
Every gamer boycott is only 1 3-minute cinematic away from being over. Yep.
so much
That's
through
right.
your gameplay trailers, your cinematic trailers, all of that has just not been there. I think the first
Oh,
case
Ghost
of
Recon
this, where I
Wildlands, so
truly
good.
experienced it, was the first trailer that came out for The Division. I remember looking at this thinking this is truly a next-gen experience.
Yeah, people were really
I'm
excited
looking
about
forward
this.
to this. This is going to be great. And then actually watching gameplay footage after it. And what I find strange is over the
Crazy how it
years,
could just
'cause
get
we're
worse.
so used to this as gamers, we have normalized
It was
this.
definitely
We
a
expect
downgrade.
it. We watch
As
a
good as that
gameplay
game
trailer,
was.
and we're like, okay, I know it's going to be worse on launch, but it is what it is. We just accept it. After all of this, for quite a while,
Jesus.
I believe that Ubisoft had the potential to return to its roots, to listen to us fans and reignite that spark of creativity. The thing that drove this thought was, don't they want to make money? Are they not tired of losing money? But apparently their idea of making money is very different. Everyone is trying to be the new Fortnite, with their battle passes, with their DLCs, with their paid-for content, their
Exactly.
add-ons,
And
especially
like, you think about a battle pass, like, look at this armor set, for example. This
The funny thing about the Ubisoft games, too, is they're so incompetent. Usually you can't pass the stores. Like, you can't bypass them. Everything's kept server-side. But they're so incompetent that there are cheat engines out there that literally go through and unlock the hundreds of items in their store, and with a single click or two of a button. Very easy to set up, very easy to do, and I've never seen that in any other game, even single player games with microtransactions. You usually can't get around it, can't mod it in. It's kept behind a proper server, but in the Assassin's Creed games, specifically Odyssey and Valhalla, and I'm going to guess the new one's going to do the same because they're terrible at their jobs. You could just click 1 or 2 buttons and you get all the paid DLC for free.
armor set is fucking awesome. This looks really, really cool. And in an old video game, this would have been obtained from beating the game on the hardest difficulty. But it seems like you just buy it.
And it's not illegal either, because these files were actually in the game. You were literally just unlocking it, hence the cheat engine. It's just a memory hack. It's just turning a 1 to a 0 and unlocking it for your character. That's all it is. You don't have to download anything. It's all right there in the game.
With money now. That's it.
especially on single-player games, which makes no flippin' sense. So I used to believe this. I definitely don't believe this anymore. I don't believe that there's actually a way for Ubisoft to come back. A wise, bold man once said,
I believe you cannot reason a person out of a position that they did not reason themselves into.
in this case, the person is
Yeah.
a large AAA company. Greed, ego, and toxic positivity that permeates their messaging doesn't stem from reason. They come from a disconnection with the very players who once supported them. It's frustrating to see how these companies prioritize profits over passion. The decisions being made seem driven by a boardroom mentality.
You gotta hire the people who have the passion, though. That's the thing. They don't hire those people.
It's much more broad. It's that as the company grows in scope and scale, it involves people that are not endemically involved with its with the industry. And so you have
Too many
somebody
outside
who's like a
businessmen.
CFO
Good example.
that's coming from like Kellogg's, and now he's working
Yep.
at Ubisoft. Well, he doesn't understand all the nuances of video games in a lot of cases. So you have massive disconnects, and you have people that get brought in out of industry that don't understand, like, really kind of like what the secret sauce is.
They
for
don't
making
understand
games.
their
Like, they don't
customers or
understand
the
it with
market.
the same type of nuance that somebody who, you know, built something like this from the ground up would understand it. And I think that as studios get bigger, that becomes more and more true. And I think
And even if you want to exploit people, you still got to understand your customers, even if that's your intention, as bad as it is. By understanding your customer, you can get... There are many, many more ways that you can learn to extract more money from the players if you do understand them. So it's pretty much a lose-lose situation.
recently there was like some CEO of like Sears or something like that comes and he's like, now he's, you know, a decision maker at a video game company. Like, maybe that's going to work out, maybe it's not. But if you had to ask me, like, do I think it will or not? I'd say it won't. Time to gatekeep more? Well, no, it's not gatekeeping, really. It's about it's about the studios and the companies.
Gatekeeping can be a good thing.
Talent that don't have an understanding of the
It's
actual,
not always bad.
like, creation process. They only understand it. They understand it as a theoretical, where they look at like numbers or a flow chart, but they don't really like understand it fundamentally.
Maximizing shareholder value instead of crafting meaningful experiences, the heart of what makes gaming special gets lost. But despite these frustrations with the AAA landscape, I'm actually quite grateful for indie developers and smaller game studios. This year, in my opinion, has been one of the best years for gaming that I've experienced in a long time.
I completely agree, and I'm really glad that he said this. I think that if you're the kind of person that only plays AAA games, like basically, if you get all of your games off of cable news television commercials, you probably hate video games more than anybody else.
And you're missing
But
out.
if you are a more invested
So many
gamer
great games
and
out
you
there
pay
now.
attention to smaller indie titles, you're
So
playing
many
things
good
that,
games
you know,
filling the
friends
void.
recommend you, etc. I think you're going to have a great experience, and I think gaming is better now than it ever has.
Got to
been.
get over
And I think
yourself.
the reason
Stop
why isn't because
with
there's,
these
like,
AAA games
so
and just
many,
go out there
like,
and play the
super
good stuff.
amazing, like Elden Ring quality games. It's more that you have so many options, and there are all these little studios that are creating
And they're
experiences.
cheaper.
Like Dredge was very
Save some money.
popular. I never got a chance to play
Not
it.
just
I watched
time.
a little bit of gameplay, but this was like one of the top indie games last year. I work at John Deere. They brought in a marketing director who sold welding glass and supplies at a large chain. The dude spent 3 to 4 years here and still could not sell a tractor accessories to anyone. He couldn't name one fucking thing about most of the add-ons. He knew gas, though. Exactly. And that's what happens.
Wow.
Is as a studio gets big,
John Deere's really
people
missing the
that
mark. There's
they
been
try
lots
to,
of
like, hire
controversies with
people
them
to,
lately.
like, operate it on like a theoretical level, and then they lose sight of what the actual like creation process is. I think that's what happens.
This time in years, I actually find myself with multiple games on my Steam account.
Here's another example of that is FaZe. Remember, FaZe had that problem. Then FaZe Banks bought out the company again, and then he went back and he took it back to doing what it does best, which is creating content for teenage guys, and FaZe is fucking killing it. It's because it was taken over by a bunch of corporate suits that had no understanding of what the actual product they were trying to sell was.
That I really want to dive into, but I just don't have the time to play them all. Titles like Black Myth Wukong, Helldivers 2, Pal World, Enshrouded, Once Human, Space Marine 2. I say that, but I actually finished the campaign because I enjoyed it so much. I think I finished it within 2 days, which is a lot for me. That's good for me. All these games really have captured my attention this year. They are innovative and original. Some of them not original, but they take what we've loved in the past and they've expanded on it with innovation.
Hades 2 is a great example of that. I mean, in a lot of ways, I kind of like the gameplay of Hades 1 more, but I didn't play enough of Hades 2 to really say that with like any sort of certainty. And I think Elden Ring, like a lot of what is in Elden Ring isn't really new, but it's just done very, very well.
Passion with obvious zeal for their gaming. Take Pal World, for example. Everyone loves Pokemon. People enjoy it. I never really got into it myself, but hearing the stories,
Me neither.
YouTube videos,
I
everyone
thought the games
Actually
were
crazy
trash.
to look at how
I know that's
fucking garbage
controversial.
Pokemon- This looks so bad. This looks like it came out of a GameCube game. This is insane.
I feel like they never
waiting
put the
for
heart and
a
soul into the
game
Pokemon games. I
like
think the
Pal World.
concept's great,
Yeah,
but
Pal
Pal World
World
was the
scratches
first
an
one that
itch
was made
that
for
a lot
pure
of
fun.
people have been dying to
Exactly.
scratch for many years, and this is why Pal World has been successful.
Yes.
Why have you not made a game like this, Nintendo? Who knows?
I bet you $1 million that there's a bunch of guys at Nintendo that are like, see, I told you they'd want a game like this. Why aren't we doing this? See, oh, they did it.
Pokemon's
Oh,
so
I was
huge,
wrong
just like
for saying
something
we
like
should
Harry
use- oh,
Potter.
look at
It's
that. What kind of
insane. The
copies
market
they
is
sold.
huge for
I
it.
told you guys.
Such a fail.
Absolutely, they're thinking that. 100%. They're not stupid.
You could only get away with it for so long before someone else was going to come out with something very similar that fed into the market that was basically starved for a real good AAA quality experience. Because most of the Pokemons weren't handhelds. We never really had that huge Pokemon console or PC experience where it was just this huge AAA game with all the budget and love and soul into it. And then Pal World comes out. And early access, but everything they put in the game just because they thought it was fun. People thought capturing monsters was fun. People like Pokemon. What about Pokemon with guns? People like shooting stuff. Not a single unique concept, but the actual game was fun, and lots of people bought it. It was one of the biggest games. What was it, last year? Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, now,
There's
yeah,
other
Nintendo's
games
so
that
out of touch.
I'm also looking forward to playing, which I just don't have time for, like Deadlock, or even the DLC for Elden Ring. These
Yeah.
games, plus many more,
Or rather, the company that's responsible for Pokemon. I know it's a
But
separate
also,
development
if
company.
you talk about Deadlock, one of the reasons why I haven't really played a lot of Deadlock is that it's a competitive game, and I feel like the skill cap for competitive games go up so fast that it's not as fulfilling for a casual player to play one anymore.
I'm
because-
very casual with Twitch shooters. The biggest one I got into was Overwatch, and had my fun on and off for years. Not a fan of Overwatch 2, obviously, but I'm not good with Twitch skills. I'm terrible. I understand the concepts. I knew how to get better. I understood, like, the fundamental concepts of getting better as a player, but those pale in comparison to just having, like, really good Twitch skills. And mine were not there, even for characters that didn't really depend on it. It really drives a player. Makes it way less
There's
fun.
so many of these like nuances and like esports like focused designs that make the game like highly technical and like hard
Yeah.
to play. And the good people get so good that
And also, the younger generation is ones who grow up with these and then they get better and better. And my age, you don't really get better, not like you do when you're a teenager. Like, I have a lot of accomplishments under my belt for different games when I was younger, games that no one I know to this day could really beat outside of ROM saves, which weren't a thing back then. And I had my niche. I was a good player, better than most people were with certain types of games and very specific games. But when it comes to Twitch games, no, didn't grow up with them, and I can't compete with
it's
anyone.
like with Fortnite, right? Like I mean,
Completely
how many
pushes
of you
me out of the
guys,
market
like,
personally.
loved Fortnite on release, and then or like in 2018, I don't think it was really released then, but like whenever it first came out. But then when people started like power building and like fucking turbo building or whatever, like you pretty much were like, okay, this is too much, and you stopped playing. That was me. It's like I build like a wall and then I build a ramp and then I'm like, okay, all right, let's go. And the guy next to me has built a mansion and he's shooting a rocket at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they built a hotel, exactly.
My
Or a
excitement
stairway to
for
heaven,
what
quite
was to
literally.
come, but not from AAA games, AAA companies, or
Basically,
AAA
all I
IPs.
suck now.
In an ideal world,
Well, it
we-
is that basically you suck now, but that is true. It's basically like, I don't want to play the game because I'm going to suck at the game.
And that's the thing co-op games overcome. That's why they're so huge and they're coming back. Because not only are big companies making them again, but they don't have that barrier. You can be a sucky player and end up with a great player on your team, but since you're not fighting against them, they elevate you. They're fun to play with, assuming they're not too elitist, but it's good for everyone. It doesn't push anyone out, and Deep Rock has been such a huge like eye-opener in so many ways. Like, I already knew this before, but damn, the community in Deep Rock Galactic, I haven't had one bad experience in there, and people who've played it for years have said they can count on one hand the amount of bad experiences. That game is crazy good for the community. It's so wholesome, and it's where I think all players of the game hope that Helldivers 2 eventually reaches that state. Such a great game. Great community. Probably the best I've ever ran across in an online game, and I've played tons of online games.
But the problem is that being able to get good at a game now requires such a massive time commitment that
Yep, and it doesn't matter as much in co-op games.
It's really hard to stay cutting edge with it. It's a competitive game.
We will
Yeah,
see the death
just
of
for
Ubisoft,
competitive
of
games.
other big AAA
Drives a lot of
companies
people off.
eventually. And with
Yeah.
this death, I hope that they are able to sell their IPs to other companies that are passionate about gaming.
Yep.
I would love to see Star Wars or
Jesus.
Assassin's Creed in the hands of a company that cares about the fans. I think I'm going to end this video here. I'm planning on doing a part.
Heck, even a company that's respectful to the culture that they're making the game for and surrounding. The next AC doesn't look good. I'm sure a lot of people out there who will see this know that already, but let's just say the Japanese are not taking it good. It's highly offensive in so many ways. There's another channel I'm pretty sure we'll eventually get to. They're absolutely amazing, and they cover basically all the things wrong with the next Assassin's Creed game that's coming out. It's a dude and his Japanese wife that actually knows enough about the culture. Obviously, it's her culture, that she can easily point out all the flaws just from the trailers alone, and it's absolutely brilliant. It's hilarious.
Of this, so do subscribe
hope
if
he
you're
does.
interested in that. But yes, otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
I'm going to be honest. If this guy had 100,000 subscribers, I'd say that he deserved more, and he has 200.
Yeah, that was an amazing first video.
So, I'm
232, does that
this is such a
say?
great video. This is made by a guy.
His first video?
He must be one of my viewers, right? He mentioned a few things I said in the thing, and he asked me to watch it, and I definitely feel like it was a good
Padda,
video.
Padda. So definitely go check him out, just like Asmon's gonna say.
Liked it a lot. And so yeah, it was a great video. Absolutely, part 2. Oh yeah, no, I'll watch part 2 at some point.
Yeah, part 2's already out.
They're smart viewers. Yeah, I think so too. There is a part 2. I'll watch part 2. Like, I want to cover some other stuff today, and we'll probably watch part 2 tomorrow, because I think that one's really, really good. Like, I think the editing was good. Like, there wasn't anything. One big component for me is, like, there's nothing obnoxious that made me want to turn the video off. A lot of people, if this is especially true with, like, transitions, is that they try to, like, have, like, these, like, beats where it, like, keeps your attention. And to me, it's like, when I see that, it's like, oh my god, I'm like, now I'm being overstimulated, you know? I'll be right back. Or it's just loud and annoying.